Welcome to Hub Hits. We're talking alternative media today. A real pleasure to welcome into the studio Lee Taylor, the founder, managing director of Uncommon Sense, who just happens to be the Hub's media guru on all things web and social media. Lee, great to have you here in studio.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
You do a lot of interesting work at Uncommon Sense with different brands and companies across basically the Anglosphere, working more with alternative media than the so-called legacy press. What are some of the big trends that you're kind of seeing in this like fast-moving moment of AI exploding, of people's preferences in terms of how they're consuming information changing? What's really captured you the last 6 months or so with your clients?
So I think actually the change started a while ago. It probably started about 2 or 3 years ago, and maybe lockdown has something to do with that. But what we're seeing now is the blow up of audio and of video content that people are just consuming. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. I think technological change is driving that. I think that the fact that people have got 5G in their pocket and they can stream HD straight to their phone, they are watching and consuming video content and audio content while they're doing that. But also the fact that people's consumer choices change. So gone are the days where you just go to one single news outlet and see what they had to say about the day's news. People much prefer a much more augmented take on who they get their news from. So they'll go on Twitter, they'll look at their favorite authors or their favorite people and say, what do they have to say about this particular piece? And video and YouTube content in particular allows people to do that because the algorithm drives what they're interested in, and so they can consume that, who they want to consume from, directly from YouTube. So they're not putting legacy TV on anymore. I mean, TV is pretty much dead. I mean, we're in a podcast studio now. It's pretty much dead. People are going on and they're using their various devices and their various applications on those devices to just drive video direct into them. Now, there's other things that are going on as well, and that is, I think the written stuff has certainly got a ceiling when it comes to how many people want to read a long article. You know, anything over 5,000 words, people just haven't got the time. People are so time poor now. They want things right now. Video allows them to walk, to be cooking in the evening, and allows them to just consume that content at that particular time. So it's really just blown open when people consume stuff and what they consume and how they consume it.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that here at the Hub. Huge growth on our YouTube channel and on podcasting. The website, though, seems to remain important, text-based content for that older cohort. Is this really a story of generations, Lee, or are these shifts that you're seeing of the movement away from reading as the primary way that we assimilate information to video and audio, is that something that older groups are also maybe going towards, maybe not at the same rate, but is this a story of cohorts and generations or a society-wide phenomenon?
There's definitely a truth to that. And certainly older generations are still consuming more traditional types where they're reading rather than watching. But it's the rate of change is across all demographics, and that rate of change is old people aren't exempt. They still got YouTube. They're still using those types of they're still using that type of content. And young people aren't young forever. And people are growing up as well, and they're dragging the technology, the TikToks that they were using in their early 20s, they're dragging that technology into their 30s and their 40s. And so you're finding that the change is happening across, although the younger generation is driving it more.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about social media because, it was such a phenomenon, in the last decade, 2016, what was it? Was that with the first Trump presidency, he kind of blows up social media politically. Am I right, Lee, to feel maybe that social media is not as all-encompassing and dominant as it used to be? And if that is the case, who's advantaging themselves if social media is maybe not bleeding users overall, but somehow bleeding influence in terms of, again, how people are consuming and thinking about the world?
They've definitely still got some skin in the game. They've definitely still got influence, social media companies. And I think really what changed recently was Musk buying X. And before they could control the narrative. They could turn things down. I'm not going to direct and say that this was actually happening, but maybe I've heard that they were turning things down.
Well, there's some evidence to this in terms of congressional hearings, especially around COVID, that there were certain messages that were suppressed on the platforms. There were certain types of content generated by users that was effectively banished.
Right, and that they had that monopoly. So as soon as you then bring one player into the game that blows up that monopoly, where it's like freedom of speech and you can say what you want, and although he says freedom of speech, not freedom of reach, the other companies have had to react. And you had Zuckerberg come out, a couple of weeks ago where he was on Rogan and he said, yes, we were being asked to take things down. But he also said that before we were punishing political content wasn't get surfaced, and we're going to take that away. And I think they've recognized that changing landscape means that they no longer had the influence that they did. And now they've got to react and open things up more. But also, there's more mediums that are coming on. There's other social media platforms than just the X and the Facebooks of the world. Could you argue that YouTube's a social media platform? I'd say it definitely is. It's certainly having much more when you look at eyeballs and competition for eyeballs. It's definitely winning that battle. But then there's also sites, like the Hub, like some of the other alternative media sites, which are not necessarily conforming to the legacy media narrative, that are also getting a lot more traction. And people now want to go to those because they feel like they're getting the truth, or they feel like they're getting more of the truth and a less politicized story. But also, I think what's coming is individuals are starting to become more influential, and people go to individuals to hear what they have to say. Jordan Peterson's a great example. Right. He's got a massive following. People want to hear his take on different parts of the news, so they go to him to hear what he has to say. And if he's writing in the Telegraph in the UK or the National, I think in Canada, people are going to go and read what he has to say rather than just go and read the Telegraph.
Right.
So it's really blown up in a number of ways. You've got a disruption with X and the free speech element of that it's brought in, but also you've got influences individuals that people want to hear from, and they go and go and find those people to hear what they have to say.
Let's talk about AI a bit. It's certainly seeming to, again, create a whole new set of opportunities for producers to create content at scale. There's a reaction, though, to it. People seem to be turned off at times by the content. I wonder what happens, though, Lee. Even in the last 6 months, we've seen here at the Hub, watching generative AI as it's applied to news and commentary, it's becoming increasingly difficult to actually be able to discern what is AI-generated content versus what is not. So I get that people don't like it, it turns them off, but if they can't tell the difference, where the heck are we at?
That's a genuine problem. And the better AI gets, the less people are going to be able to tell the difference. So if I had all the answers, I think that I'd be a very rich man. But what I think we've got to do is we've got to look at human nature, and we've got to assume that that's what's going to help drive our decisions and what people are going to want going forward. So humans don't like to be lied to, but they also like relationships with other people. And if they feel like they get a relationship with AI, there's going to be an intermediary there that they're not going to be able to assimilate with. What they want is to have relationships with people. And so I think that's something to keep in mind. And people are going to try and weed out whether they're getting an AI generation of Rudyard or whether they're going to get the real Rudyard. Mm-hmm. But really, as long as what the AI-generated Rudyard says is in consistent nature with what the actual Rudyard would say, I don't think that they're going to worry whether it's AI or whether it's not AI. It's more about the credibility of the voice rather than whether it's generated through AI or not.
Yeah, the source, in a sense. Is the source code everything that I've ever written, everything that I've ever spoken? That actually might be pretty close to a replica of what I would say to you now if we were having an AI ask these questions. It's just such a weird idea, though, to think that in a matter of a year or so, this entire interview could be conducted by your avatar in London, England, where your company is headquartered out of, and my avatar here in Toronto, Canada. And unless we were a good actor, which we are, and we didn't declare that, all of this could just be a completely simulated reality. I mean, we've taken the blue pill at that moment, have we not, Lee?
We have, and I think it comes back to your original point. It's the source, and it as long as they feel like they're getting what they expect from those avatars, then I'm sure that they'll happily engage with those avatars. I'm sure that, you know, how good does it get? Can I have a conversation with Jordan Peterson, with Ben Shapiro while I'm in the car going home? And maybe I'll go, well, I'll ask them to see what they have to say, because then I'm going to get what they have to say. It might be generative AI, but it's going to use the body of understanding and everything that they've written in the past to generate an answer going forward. So, you know, how personal does this get, and where are we headed?
Yeah, and I guess this would be my final point. Could there be a value, a premium, both for legacy outlets and maybe hopefully outlets like the Hub, that if you have had a pattern of behavior where you've generally disclosed when you use AI or how you use AI, or the fact that you're trying to be a good actor, not a bad actor, do you think in a sense both legacy brands and people who are seen to have acted responsibly in the past vis-a-vis their audiences with disclosure proactively, will they carry some kind of surplus of trust into this world where, as you say, honesty, being lied to, is suddenly going to have much bigger consequences because you're literally being lied to about reality. You're being lied to as to whether this is really me talking to you or a projection of me, a simulation of me. I don't know. I'm hopeful about that, but maybe, Lee, we also have to be realistic in that some people just simply won't care, as you say, what it is, as long as it's entertaining, as long as it's outrageous, as long as it's whatever the more atavistic parts of our brain, you know, those pleasure centers like to fire on.
Some people won't care. Some people won't care maybe that they're living in reality or not, and that's probably a bigger conversation. But your point about trust, and really the trust in the institution, is where you're going. As long as you don't break that trust, then I think people will care less if it's generative AI or if they're not getting the real you in the studio. They're just getting a projection of you in the studio. But as soon as you break that trust, I think that's when you're going to come unstuck, because it's very hard to get it back. You were seeing it with a lot of institutions across the West, the universities, the legacy media. They've all broken that big amount of trust that they've built up over however many years, and now they really can't get it back. So as long as the institution that is using this technology is trusted and doesn't go and break that trust, then I think users and consumers will really not mind between the two.
Yeah. So Lee, if people want to find out more about your company, Uncommon Sense, where do they go?
They go to uncommonsense.co.uk.
.co.uk. Yes. Hey, I like the domain. Lee Taylor, thank you so much for coming on Hub Hits today.
You're welcome. It's good to speak to you.
It was Lee Taylor, who, among many things, is the kind of digital web guru here at the Hub. He's helped us from the very beginning of our organization think through a whole bunch of strategies around our website, social media, and everything we do to try to get you this content each and every day. So please subscribe to the channel. And if you are listening to us on our podcast feed right now, leave a review. We love that. Or share this episode with friends and family. We'll talk to you next time on Hub Hits. Bye-bye.